Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you the top 10 most legendary Ark Tames. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. At number 10 we have got ourselves the Crystal Wyvern, and this creature is here simply because, come on, it's the Crystal Wyvern. Compared to the normal Wyvern, I find it is just a much better creature, and it is so much better for me that I have to put it on the legendary creatures list. It's kind of a marvel, a miracle if you will, that this creature is actually in the game. A Wyvern, and even a better version of the Wyvern that is significantly easier to tame than the normal Wyvern, and also just generally a lot less hassle on servers, as a lot less people tend to be on Crystal Isles than maps like Ragnarok. Ragnarok is actually the most popular Ark map out there, at least I'm still confident it is. I'm not sure where Fjorda is at, but I'm pretty sure Ragnarok is still the king. Also, on top of that, you might be saying, well, Wyvern spawn on Scorched Earth. Well, they're really just a pain on that map. Whereas on Crystal Isles with the Crystal Wyverns, you can simply just get the Primal Crystal, you knock out one of these things, and you can get the Primal Crystal from them, and then it'd be level 60, passive tame them, and boom, there you go. The personal favourite of mine is the Blood Crystal Wyvern. I just really like the abilities that it has. This is the Tropical Crystal Wyvern, but a lot of you out there in the comments below have been saying you really love the Ember Crystal Wyverns, and they definitely are a really good one as well. And if you've never tried out Crystal Wyvern before, if you're anti-Crystal Wyvern as well, really try one out for yourself. And if you've tried them loads and then you still hate them, then that is the only excusable excuse for not liking these things. Continuing on, we have got ourselves the Snow Owl. This creature can be found all across Extinction, and I think it can also be found on Fjorda as well, and it really is one of those gold stars. It gets a gold star from me, if you will. This creature is just so great in its density of abilities and its just general use. Like, PvP players can use this thing, PvE players can use it. It's not very one-sided. It's so versatile in all of its features. Namely, it is a glider, which means you can really rack up some serious speed with this thing. It does definitely help. Yes, Managamas have a lot of speed on them, but still you can actually gather quite a significant amount of it with a creature like this. You're not really missing out too much. They can't quite get to the same speeds, but still there's a lot more control I find in a creature like this, at least at my current skill level with flying Managamas. They also do kind of have a UV heat seeking. It's not UV, is it? It's infrared. It would be for heat. Either way, they have a infrared heat seeking ability where they can see heat coming off of any organism, and I'm not sure if just general hot things like lava show as well, but that should just be pretty obvious anyway. You can kind of use it like a night vision camera as well. Also, if you level up down on these things, not only can they fly longer distances, but you can also heal up creatures with them, which again is just going to make these things really nice to use. It is ideal to have a creature that can heal others in this way. Like, yes, the Daedon does definitely do a good job at healing creatures, but I find the Snow Owl just has it better. And also with Snow Owl pellets being useful for gadgets as well to get some insane loot out of them, they really are so versatile, and you should definitely use one of these things at some point, considering just how easy they are to tame. So, a fan favourite of many at the moment, and obviously just ever since release. It's not really a trend thing. This has always been at the top of many lists ever since it was launched. I'm not actually sure when. It's a 2023 creature. It released some point in that time. I think later on in the year, but it could have been earlier on as well. Again, my mind is really not the most up to date with things like this. Time goes by so fast, doesn't it, really? And you look back at all these things and you're like, actually, when was that? Either way, the Argentavis can be found on the island and also the Lost Island, and I find on normal Ark these creatures are quite rare, whereas on ASA they're a lot more abundant. I don't know what it is. Is it just like how the spawns work, or is it just some kind of placebo where I'm just like, oh yeah, more are definitely spawning, when actually no more are spawning? I haven't really played much ASA anyway, so it's not that I've played more. Either way, looking on it, the Argentavis is an extremely strong tame which you can find in the swamp biome, and it really is going to be extremely useful for that job. Not only because they can deal heavy amounts of damage, but also they can pick up a large range of creatures as well, and on top of it they're just heavily mobile flyers which are really capable. They're really strong in what they do, and although their tame method is pretty much just a rehashing of the Reaper, it's still a really cool one to walk through. And now with the net gun and things like that, this tame actually does become quite a breeze. It's a lot harder, especially if you go for the 100% effectiveness. I find that not really to be the most useful on a creature like this. That's just my personal preference though, but you know, you might think differently. Comment your thoughts down below. Are you a pro 100% effectiveness on running Argentavis or against it? Because it seems to me a lot more effort than it's worth, and they're really not that difficult to tame anyway. Just get yourself the highest level one that you can find and tame it. Just normally, you don't need the 100% effectiveness. If you have the resources at the time, then just go for it. You might as well. But you know, for me it's not really worth it because they're not really boss creatures, and they still really do pack a punch no matter the effectiveness. But it obviously does matter on the level. Some really low level ones tend to really lack in the health department. In at number 7, we have got ourselves the Argentavis. This creature is here, as for me it is just one of those kings. I can't live in Ark without an Argentavis in the map. Spawns all over the island and really is a popular one among many, including myself. It is so capable of gathering things like metal, crystal and obsidian, especially considering it has weight reduction on them. Obviously it's not going to be doing the gathering, but it's going to be doing all of the heavy lifting and the carrying. Obviously you can pair it with Nanki and a Dodic, and then you can gather all that metal, crystal, obsidian, stone, thatch, wood, even depending on what creatures you're using. So there's a lot of versatility you can get out of a creature like this. Also, people do give them a bit of a bad hit sometimes for their slowness, whereas actually I find they're not the slowest things out there, and especially considering that you've got a very high stamina and very high weight stats, they are a lot nicer to use than something like a Pteranodon, in my opinion. Yes, they're not as fast, but you don't have to take as many breaks, especially if at the time you don't really have a very high level Pteranodon, because you tend to be taming lower level ones as they kind of first flies in the game, but obviously you will get some higher ones later on. But still, even with 150s, I find they're a bit lackluster in the stamina and weight department still, whereas the RGs really aren't, and you can really push with an RG. On top of that as well, their saddle does act as a portable smithy, which is just a really nice addition to have, and also a nice regen buff is gained if you kill something or if you just eat any general dead corpse. Now, I'm sure you all did expect this creature to be on the list, and yes, we have got ourselves the Shadowmain. This is just one of those creatures where it is so improved from something like the Thyla. It kind of seems a little bit mental why you'd still be using those, apart from their climbing ability and also just general accessibility. I'm not saying the Thyla doesn't have any use anymore. You can still definitely use it. It is a great creature. It's not like it's had all of its ability stripped from it, but there's just less going for it now since this creature's been released. I know it's been released for a while, but still, you know, the Thyla's been around still for a lot longer than this thing. It is fast, agile, can go invisible, has the hydration buff, deals tons of damage, has natural armor, and no saddle is required. And although the tame methods can be an absolute pain pretty much all of the time, they are really nice to have, and also they're pretty decent underwater as well, which you might not expect, but you also might expect considering their code name in the game is Lionfish Lion. So, you know, they better be good at swimming, and they definitely are. Really great boss creatures as well, and just general all-rounders. They've got the mobility, they've got the damage, they've got really everything going for them in a small carnivore. In at number 5, we have got the Blood Stalker, and I put this creature here as I find it is so useful for doing any kind of like underwater exploration. And I know you can get Megalodons and Mosas and Basilos and all those creatures to be able to explore those underwater environments, but I find with a creature like this is the top tier one out there. I have found nothing better ever since I started using it. Firstly, you can skim over the top of the water, and also once in the water it has an incredible amount of speed, and you can see all the aggros of the creatures nearby as well, so it really does generally benefit you. And I'm not sure if it has the kind of neutral mode as well. I haven't actually used these things within the past week, and my brain is failing me because I've had some other musicy stuff going on, if you are wondering, by the way. Either way, these creatures incredibly great for underwater travel, but also just incredibly great for normal travel as well. They are so ideal for general travel as long as you have some kind of elevation in the area. It's not going to work on just flat plains, but they still do have a decent amount of speed in them walking, although it can be a little bit of a drag, and there's some better creatures out there just for walking across flat plains. You can find some creatures which will vastly excel compared to the Bloodstalker in that asset, but this has other uses. Also on top of that, they actually aren't the worst damage dealers out there. You definitely wouldn't be bringing these things into boss fights. I'm not even sure if they're allowed into boss fights, probably not, considering their like grappling abilities all around, but they're not actually the worst damage dealers, and you can actually, if you get a high level one, deal some pretty decent damage to some enemies. You'd probably be surprised actually. Now, I'm sure you expected the Desmodus to be on this list. Come on, it is the Desmodus after all. Probably my favourite or second favourite glider really, considering what's coming up next on the list, although that one does work slightly differently as it's technically not a flyer, and although this does have the gliding ability, it's still a flyer, but it glides in a way. The next one is just generally a glider. It's not the Rock Drake. The Rock Drake is sadly not on this list. Sorry, it's not a legendary tame for me. I know it's a really great creature, but still, you know, it's not quite for me. Whereas the Desmodus definitely is. You've got Sanguine Elixir. It's an absolute cheat for tames. Obviously, that gliding ability is going to warrant you tons of speed, which is really nice. They can go up onto walls and vertical surfaces, just like a Tapijara. They're much better than a Tapijara, by the way. Much more worth your time as well. The exact same tame method as the Bloodstalker, simply just get some blood bags and they will eat it out of your inventory, and boom, Desmodus. They do also need a saddle as well, but that's fine. Also, you get additional armor with the saddle anyway, so it's usually a good thing to have a saddle than to not. Also, on top of this as well, they can go invisible and pick players off riders too with absolute ease. In at number 3, we have got ourselves the Mwing, and this creature really did have to be here for me. Come on, it is that cute platypus glider which has an incredible amount of speed and incredible amount of use in the travelling aspects. They really are OP creatures for this, especially considering you can get them around the time that you'd be getting yourself a raptor. They are some of the most OP creatures considering how early on you can get them in the game, and if you have access to them, I implore you, please get yourself some Mwings and start training on them and get good at flying them. They might seem a little bit difficult and a little bit clunky, a little bit quirky at first, but trust me, once you get used to them, you are never going to want to turn back from these things. They are the ideals, and it's actually nice when you just transfer one onto your server in ASA. There's just a lot more that you can do on the island once you've got a Mwing on the map. Just travelling is so much easier. You thought Pteranodon was fast. Look at the Mwing. These things are absolute zoomers across the map. Not on the generation standard though, that's a different thing. Either way, also these things act as a portal feeding trough as well. Just great if you like your breeding. Also, these things can skim across the top of water, and they're pretty good barrier gatherers as well with that cute belly flop of theirs. Really useful, great legendary tames. In at number 2, we've got ourselves the Reaper. This creature has to be here for me. Come on, it's the Reaper. This invented that pretty weird and very innovative and interesting taming method that we all know and love from the Rhino Ganatha. Obviously, it's basically just a reskin of it, but essentially this is the creature that started it, and for me it is so much more legendary. Just taming a Reaper for the first time is probably one of the coolest things that you can do in the game, especially if you do an Aberration. Or Gen 2 feels a little bit like a cheese because it's so easy, unless you obviously still do it the normal way, but still it just generally is easier because you've got flyers on that map and you've got gliders and all of those things. I know you have the Rockdrake on Aberration, but still you're very limited for travelling creatures on that map, and they're so deep down under in the depths that it really does add a lot of good sense of progression once you actually finally get one of these things. And even once you tame one, or once you're impregnated by a Reaper Queen, you still got to come all the way back up into safety, and it's just such a long endeavour but such a fun one, and I definitely implore you to do it. Once you've got one as well, you can deal tons of damage. You feel on top of the world. These creatures are definitely well worth it. Yes, you've got Gigans and Crocodontosaurus, and they're legendary in their own way, but not as legendary as the 10 creatures on this list, and certainly not as legendary as the Reaper King. And finally, in at number 1, we've got ourselves the Deinonychus. This always tops the list for me. I don't know what it is about this creature, but I do, obviously. It's on here in at number 1 spot, and I'm going to talk about why I love it so much, but it's so interesting how this creature has really gripped me as an Ark player. Firstly, they've got tons of speed and mobility. It's insane actually how much speed you can get on these things, and they take no full damage, which is just really great for me. I know you can just dismount just before you hit the ground, but you lose a little bit of immersion there because obviously you wouldn't really be able to do that in real life. Just the smoothness and fluidity of not having to do that really does benefit you, and you can just absolutely tear creatures to shreds with the bleed ability, especially considering that you can grip onto them and do this as well. You can even do this to bosses, which is insane. You can shred through bosses so quickly, especially considering these things also have the pack buff. They really do have everything going for them, apart from the hydration buff and underwater exploration, but you don't really need that for this creature. So yes, maybe it's not the perfect all-rounder, but there's no creature which really does fill all the assets, while you might say the Shadowmain does a similar thing. It lacks in the bleed ability, and it also does lack a climbing ability, which the Deinonychus has, and it also lacks the no full damage, and on top of that as well, they can't deal the bleed damage, obviously with the bleed ability, which the Deinonychus and the Thyla can, but the Thyla isn't even allowed into bosses, so we're going to outrule that one completely. So yes, the Deinonychus really is the most legendary creature for me. Very easy tames as well, and so worth it. Out of every creature in Ark, this is the one which I will be taming the most. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I really hope that you all have enjoyed, as I definitely very much enjoyed making it. As always, comment down below what is the most legendary Ark tame to you, and if you didn't agree with this list, put your 10 down below, and I'll see you all later.